With the recent announcement of the Pokemon Amusement Park PokéPark Kanto, we have seen glimpses of some of the Pokemon that you'll get to see as you explore this little part of Kanto. Some of these Pokemon are not the original 151 from Kanto. Now, of course, we've known for quite some time that there must be Pokemon in Kanto that are not part of the original 151 Pokemon because we've gone back to Kanto in the Johto games and there were Pokemon that were not part of the original 151 there, and there are also some evolutions and stuff that we've discovered of the original 151 later on. So I wanted to just take a minute to go through from the games, not from the PokéPark announcement trailer, but from the games, from the Pokédexes, from just things that we've seen, what Pokemon outside of the original 151 are native to Kanto, that not originally from there perhaps, but now can be found in the wild in Kanto. The first thing that we can just easily knock off the bat are all of the evolutions and pre-evolutions of the original 151 Pokemon from the first Pokemon games. These evolutions and pre-evolutions are Crobat, Pichu, Cleffa, Igglybuff, Blossom, Politoed, Slowking, Steelix, Scizor, or Scizor, but probably not Kleavor, since that evolution seems to have to do specifically with Hisuian rocks, which probably wouldn't be found in Kanto, so I'm going to leave Kleavor off the list. Continuing on with Kingdra, Tyrogue, Hitmontop, Smoochum, Elekid, Electivire, Magby, Magmortar, Happiny, Blissey, Mine Jr., Munchlax, Magnezone, Licky, Rhyperior, Tangrowth, Annihilate, and the various evolutions that have come since the original 3 evolutions: Espeon, Umbreon, Leafeon, Glaceon, and Sylveon. Whew! That's a lot, and I didn't even make note of Porygon 2 or Porygon Z in this list because Porygon is a man-made Pokemon that wasn't originally found in the wild, so you're not going to really run into either Porygon 2 or Porygon Z in the wild out and about in Kanto, but if you really want to include them on your personal list, go ahead. But speaking of running into Pokemon out and about in Kanto, there are a ton of Pokemon introduced after the original 151 that could be found just out and about in the Kanto wilds in later games that take place in the Kanto region. Now, I'm specifically not going to be including the Sevi Islands, since it's debatable whether those are part of Kanto or not, and I'm also not including any swarms or events that happen post-game manipulated by player actions. We're really only looking at those that are just hanging out in the wilds of mainland Kanto without human, interruption of their natural habitats. These Pokemon are Sentret, Furret, Hoot, Noctowl, Ladybug, Ladyann, Spinarak, Ariados, Chinchou, Lantern, Hoppip, Skiploom, and though it isn't able to be found in the wild in these later games, we can assume that the final evolution of Jumpluff can also be found in Kanto because we've got, Hoppip and Skiploom. We've got Sunkern, and therefore we're also assuming Sunflora, Quagsire, and thus presumably its pre-evolution Wooper, Murkrow, so we're going to assume Honchkrow, Pineco, so probably also Fortress. We've got Snubbull, Granbull, Quillfish, Shuckle, Heracross, Ursaring, so therefore its pre-evolution Teddiursa can certainly also be found in Kanto as well, but I have no reason to realistically believe that we can assume its evolution Ursaluna can be found in Kanto, sadly, because it's got such a specific set of conditions that need to be met for it to evolve into Ursaluna. So we're just going to assume that those conditions can't be met in Kanto until something in the games tells us otherwise. Okay, continuing on, Slugma, so we're assuming Magcargo, Corsola, Houndour, so you know the drill, probably also Houndoom, Donphan, so the adorable Phanpy has got to be in Kanto as well. Yes, love Phanpy. We've got Wurmple, and thus probably its evolutions of Silcoon, Cascoon, Beautyfly, and Dustox. Good lord, there are so many past the original 151. Well, we're still going. Seedot, so we're assuming Nuzleaf and Shiftry as well. Shroomish, so we're assuming Breloom. Slackoth, so we're assuming Viragoth and Slacking. Starly, so we're assuming Staravia and Staraptor as well. Combee, so there's probably also a Vespiquen in charge of the Combee hives that can be found in Kanto. And similarly, Route 28 was not a location that existed in Kanto in the original Pokemon games, but was later added as a route to connect Kanto to Mount Silver in the Johto region. So of interest to us, this route, which is technically in Kanto, contains Sneasel, Natu, and Aipom. So technically these Pokemon also live in Kanto, even if it's right on the border there with the Johto Mountains. And therefore we can also assume that their evolutions of Weavile, Xatu, and Ambipom, respectively, can be found in Kanto. And I know I said I wasn't counting post-game player actions to summon Pokemon, but I'm going to make one exception for Bronzor. There are just a shit ton of places all throughout Kanto during Heart Gold and Soul Silver where Bronzor can be summoned with a Sinnoh sound, and since this metal Pokemon has an unknown purpose and evolves into a big bell, summoning it with a sound just makes a lot of sense to me. Like, it just sounds like that would activate them to stop hiding in the wild to me. So I think that Bronzor can be found in the wilds in Kanto as well. You just kind of need to know how to look for them, and therefore its evolution of Bronzong can be summoned or reawoken around various caves in the ruins of Kanto. Just from these, the ones that are like officially confirmed or just the least amount of assumptions possible, that brings our Kanto Pokemon count from the original 151 up to a total of 244. That's 93 Pokemon that for sure live in Kanto that Kanto scientists missed. 38% of them. I mean, these Kanto scientists have to be blind or just truly missing some things, because first of all, in the original generation, they said that there were only 151 Pokemon in the world, and just the naivety, the scientific chutzpah, misplaced chutzpah that you have to say, oh, only these 151 Pokemon that I found in my home, those are the only Pokemon in the whole world. Crazy. Alright, since most of these Pokemon come from Johto, with the Johto games also including Kanto as part of their games, I'm going to assume that there are no other Johto Pokemon that live in Kanto, since they just would have been shown in their own games. But since no other Pokemon games have featured Kanto other than Kanto and Johto remakes, from here on I'm going to do some educated guessing and storytelling to see what Pokemon added to the obviously Kanto-originated national dex could be likely to found in Kanto, but were just missed by those extremely unobservant scientists who stated that there were only 151 Pokemon in the world. That'd be crazy. Now, since Miltank and Tauros are counterparts of each other, with Miltank always being female and Tauros always being male, I was just ready to assume that there must be Miltank in Kanto in order for the Tauros to breed and survive, but boy was I wrong! Miltank mating with Tauros just always equals Miltank. Always. In fact, Tauros mating with anything always equals whatever the female is. The only possible way for Tauros to breed is with Ditto. Like, the only possible way for their species to continue to survive is to find and then bang the most elusive and bangable wild Pokemon ever. No wonder these guys are so aggressive, it's just because they're horny. Get it? I'm funny. So, long story short, no Miltank necessarily. Nosepass. I was ready to just skip over this one and say, no way Jose, too big, too slow, they're not getting over into Kanto, but then I thought about how many goddamn hikers and mountaineers there are in the world of Pokemon. Like, so many of the NPCs are just hikers with their rock Pokemon. People love to travel around with their Pokemon, and as many Pokédexes state, Nosepass is a great Pokemon to travel with because it always points north, so a lot of sightseeing trainers in Kanto probably have them to prevent themselves from getting lost out in the mountains and the wilds. That doesn't, of course, necessarily mean that they've made their way into the wilds just from that alone, but adding that with this Pokédex entry from Ultra Sun, it moves less than an inch a year, but when in a jam, it will spin and drill down into the ground in a split second. For as many hikers and mountaineers as there are certainly plenty who have gotten lost and gotten themselves into jams. Something happens to their trainer, the Nosepass drills into the ground, it gets separated from its trainer. Some may find each other again, but others tragically just don't. Either the, hiker dies out in the wilds, or they make their way back to civilization, but they simply just are unable to find their Nosepass again. Then those Nosepasses are out in the wild, and Nosepasses just simply have to find another big rock Pokemon to mate with. Like, they're easy to get some eggs out, and then boom, wild Nosepass in Kanto. I think it's extremely likely, probably a small population, but I think they're out there. And since we're saying Nosepass can be found in Kanto, we're going to throw Probopass in there as well. Corphish. Every single Pokédex entry of this guy is like, we don't know where it came from, but once it touches water, it will breed like crazy and can adapt to any environment. They're just always imported as pets, get released or find a way into the wild, and then procreate so much that they're just part of the ecosystem now. They should be called the invasive species Pokemon, but I've just got to assume that this has happened everywhere and that they're just in every region in the Pokemon world, since there is no region since they were first introduced that they have not been in. And since Corphish are in Kanto, we're going to assume that their evolved form of Crawdaunt are also in Kanto. Lumineon, the Pokemon Moon Pokédex, says that this deep-sea Pokemon lives at the bottom of the ocean. Its fins haul it over the seabed in search for its favorite food, Starmie. Well, we know that Starmie lives in Kanto since it's part of those original 151, and if these Pokemon love eating Starmie so much, who's to say they haven't been so deep under the ocean for Kanto scientists to spot, so it wasn't included in the original 151, but they just, make their way on up, grab up their Starmie, and then head back down to the depths. After all, there are plenty of cases we know where those Kanto scientists did not look very hard, like not seeing any baby Pichus in the wild, even though they knew about Pikachu and Raichu. Like, these scientists were not looking. And if Lumineon have made their way to Kanto waters, then they probably have had babies there, meaning that Finneon must also be around. Shellos and Gastrodon. Look, I'm trying to not have all of these Pokemon just be water Pokemon that I can just say, oh, they're just in the ocean, because, that's just a cop-out. I even skipped over Relicanth, which can absolutely be found deep in the Kanto Ocean, because it is an ancient Pokemon that apparently can live everywhere because it's perfect. So honestly, just throw Relicanth in on there. But for Shellos and Gastrodon, who are said to primarily live on the sea, but just occasionally stop on shores, I don't see how I can't mention them. Though I think only the West Sea forms will be found in Kanto shores, since they prefer warmer water, and specifically the Violet Pokédex says, apparently there are more West Sea Shellos now than there were in the past, so they might only recently have expanded their territory into the Kanto shores, but I just really think that they have. Rotom. This guy is gonna spread everywhere with the prevalence of smartphones. A ghost that can inhabit your phone? Yeah, it's made its way to Kanto by now. Welcome to the 2020s. These ghosts have prospered in modern times. They're everywhere. Joltik. Like a real-life tick, this guy clings to other Pokemon, so any Pokemon that is traveling can spread these guys around, and once they get to a city, it's over. The Black Pokédex reads, Joltik that live in cities have learned a technique for sucking electricity from the outlets in houses, so they just have an endless food supply in any major Kanto city. These guys have definitely made it into Kanto, and they are thriving. But they're small and cute, so it's fine. Galvantula, their evolved form, on the other hand, Not small, not cute, not fine, but they nevertheless must be in Kanto. Dedenne, look, I really just can't get over how Kanto scientists didn't realize that Pichu existed. For all we know, Dedenne have just always lived in Kanto, and these scientists looked at it, and they were like, huh, weird Pikachu. But, Pikachu. Now, do I personally believe that Dedenne have a reason to be found in Kanto? Probably not, but with the way that these scientists were like, there's only 151 Pokemon. Pichu? Pfft, never heard of it. Who knows? And PokéPark Kanto even seems to confirm it. I mean, they are there. I know I said I wasn't referencing this, but Kanto scientists, you piss me off so much, I just have to assume that you missed something so blatantly obvious. Cutiefly / Ribombee. These Pokemon are based on the real-life Bombelidae family of flies, also known as bee flies, which absolutely live in Japan and are absolutely adorable. Since the Kanto region is based on the Japanese Kanto region, it makes sense to me that these Pokemon would be found in Kanto, and again, just missed by those wasted, unobservant Kanto scientists. Now, I heavily considered adding Minior to this list, since it's essentially a meteor Pokemon that falls to Earth just, randomly, but the Ultra Sun Pokédex specifically states that places where Minior fall from the night sky are few and far between, with Alola being one of the precious few. So, if I were going to add this Pokemon to any past region Pokédex, it would be in the Hoenn region because of the Moss Deep Space Center, but that's completely irrelevant for this video. I don't think they're in Kanto. Mimikyu! The Violet Pokédex has this to say: Mimikyu was only recently identified as a Pokemon. Previously, people thought it was just a ghost wearing a cloth. This could easily have been the case in Kanto as well, until now. It's always been there, it just hasn't been identified as a Pokemon until recently, and it also makes a lot of sense for it to be in Kanto because Pikachu has become so popular even within the Pokemon world, so a bunch of travelers probably go to Kanto where Pikachu, I'm assuming, is most abundant, because that's where they're originally from, I think. So travelers go to try to catch themselves a Pikachu because they're so popular in-universe in the Pokemon world. These Mimikyu disguise themselves as as Pikachu to try to get themselves caught and, increase their popularity and the whole Mimikyu thing. I think they're in Kanto. Applin, the last Pokemon that I could reasonably see living in Kanto without having been categorized as one of the 151 or, an earlier time, would be Applin, because it purposefully disguises itself as an apple, and those Pichu-missing Kanto scientists would have certainly overlooked what they thought was just an apple that maybe moved occasionally. Like, they're missing this guy. And Flapple, its sour apple evolution, could also make sense since it can curl its body up and still look like an apple. But I kind of doubt big doofus Appleton is flying under the radar even for those Kanto scientists. And Dipplin and Hydrapple only evolved from a very specific type of apple grown only in one place according to the Scarlet Pokédex. Maybe there's another Kanto-specific evolution of Flapple based on certain Kanto apples, but that's way too much speculation for this video. We're just gonna keep Applin and Flapple on the Kanto list. So, after looking through the entire National Pokédex at the time of recording this video, my estimation is that there are not 151 Pokemon that call Kanto home, but rather 261, give or take a few, like since Porygon is in the 151, if we really want to add its evolutions, it's more like 263, or if you disagree with a few of my assumptions and speculations, maybe the number's a bit lower, or if you have a few speculations of your own, maybe the number's a bit higher. But I didn't even take anything from the anime into account, nothing from the PokéPark Kanto announcements, the video, the poster that they have. I didn't take any of that into account, truly just from the games and from the Pokédex entries that I could find. So that's my thoughts on what other Pokemon exist in Kanto, and for me, I know that a lot of Kanto purists are like, no, it's just the 151, what are you talking about? Anytime that there's any talk of other Pokemon being in Kanto, but realistically, it's a game. Only those 151 Pokemon were made at the time, and we have seen plenty of examples in later games of, new Pokemon are introduced, but there are also other Pokemon from other regions that live in these regions as well. I think that it makes sense for that to be the case in Kanto as well. Do you agree with me? Where do you disagree? What are your favorite thoughts of what other Pokemon can live in Kanto? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching and for nerding out with me. If you want to see me talk a bit more about Pokemon, you can see which Johto Pokemon I would eat right here. Or you can see some other video where I'm probably also talking about nerdy stuff right here. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good